What if I told you that as you watch this documentary, you're not moving forward through time, but instead you're trapped inside a finished film reel that ended long ago? What if every decision you think you're making, every breath you think you're taking, every moment you believe is now, has already happened? What if the universe, our entire reality, has already reached its final frame, and what we call the present is nothing more than consciousness replaying scenes from a cosmic movie that finished eons ago? This isn't science fiction. This isn't philosophical speculation. This is a possibility that emerges from our most advanced understanding of physics, time, and the nature of reality itself. It's an idea so disturbing that most people never encounter it, so profound that it changes everything we think we know about existence. We live our lives with the fundamental assumption that time flows like a river, carrying us from past to future. We believe that the past is gone, the future is yet to come, and only the present moment is real. But what if this is the greatest illusion ever perpetuated by human consciousness? What if time doesn't flow at all? What if past, present, and future exist simultaneously in a vast, unchanging structure? And what we experience as the passage of time is merely our consciousness moving through predetermined slices of an already completed reality? This is the forbidden question that physicists whisper about in academic corridors, philosophers debate in hushed tones, and most people never dare to consider. What if time has already ended? Tonight we're going to explore this terrifying possibility. We'll journey through the cutting-edge science that suggests our entire understanding of time is backwards. We'll discover how the greatest minds in physics have arrived at conclusions so radical they challenge the very foundations of human experience. And we'll confront the ultimate question: if time has already ended, what does that mean for consciousness, free will, and the nature of existence itself? Before we can understand how time might have already ended, we need to examine what most of us believe time to be. From the moment we're born, we experience time as a flowing river, carrying us inexorably from past to future. This seems so obvious, so fundamental to existence, that questioning it feels absurd. We wake up in the morning and move through our day. We remember yesterday, we plan for tomorrow, and we live in what we call now. The past feels fixed and immutable. We can't change what happened yesterday. The future feels open and undetermined. We believe our choices today will shape what happens tomorrow. And the present feels like the only moment that's truly real, the knife edge between what was and what will be. This intuitive understanding of time shapes everything about human experience. Our languages are built around temporal concepts. We speak in past, present, and future tense. Our emotions are temporal. We feel regret about the past, anxiety about the future, and presence in the now. Our entire concept of causality depends on this linear flow of time. Causes precede effects, actions precede consequences, decisions precede outcomes. Even our brains seem hardwired for this temporal experience. Neuroscientists have identified neural networks dedicated to processing time, regions that create our sense of duration, sequence, and temporal order. We have internal biological clocks that regulate everything from sleep cycles to hormone production, all synchronized to this apparent flow of time. But here's where it gets interesting. This seemingly obvious experience of flowing time may be nothing more than an evolutionary accident. Our brains evolved to navigate a three-dimensional world where survival depended on predicting motion, remembering food sources, and avoiding predators. A brain that could process temporal sequences, remember where the berries grew yesterday, predict where the lion might be tomorrow, had a massive survival advantage. So perhaps our experience of flowing time isn't a window into the true nature of reality. Perhaps it's just a cognitive tool, like our perception of color or our sense of up and down. We don't assume that the universe is actually painted in the colors we see. We understand that color is how our brains interpret different wavelengths of light. Similarly, maybe the flow of time is just how our consciousness interprets something far more complex and alien. Consider this. Every other intuitive belief humans once held about the nature of reality has been overturned by science. We once believed the Earth was flat, that the sun revolved around us, that matter was continuous rather than made of atoms, that space and time were absolute and unchanging. In each case, our direct experience led us astray. So why should we trust our experience of time? Why should this one aspect of reality be exactly as it appears to our evolved primate brains? What if the flow of time is the last great illusion, the final intuitive belief about the cosmos that science must destroy? The possibility becomes even more unsettling when we consider that time might not just be an illusion, it might be a finished illusion, a movie reel that has already played to its conclusion, with our consciousness simply experiencing the replay, frame by predetermined frame. To understand how time could have already ended, we must first grasp one of the most profound discoveries in the history of science. Einstein's revelation that space and time are not separate entities, but parts of a single unified structure called space-time. When Einstein published his theory of special relativity in 1905, he didn't just revolutionize our understanding of physics, he shattered our most basic assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Among his most disturbing discoveries was this: there is no universal now. There is no single moment that counts as the present throughout the universe. This seems impossible. Right now, as you listen to these words, it feels obvious that there's a specific moment that is now everywhere in the universe. Surely the entire cosmos shares this same present moment, this same slice of time, but Einstein showed that this is fundamentally wrong. The relativity of simultaneity reveals that what counts as now depends on your motion through space. Two events that appear simultaneous to one observer may appear sequential to another observer, moving at a different velocity. There is no cosmic clock ticking away universal moments. There is no absolute present moment shared by all of reality. Instead, Einstein revealed that space-time is a four-dimensional structure, often called the block universe or eternalism. In this model, time is not something that flows. It's simply another dimension, like length, width, and height. Just as all locations in space exist simultaneously, all moments in time exist simultaneously within this four-dimensional block. Imagine a loaf of bread. When you slice the bread, each slice represents a different location along its length, but all the slices exist at the same time within the whole loaf. Similarly, in the block universe, all moments of time, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously as different slices of the four-dimensional space-time loaf. This means that right now, as you experience this present moment, all other moments in time are equally real and equally existent. The moment of your birth exists. The moment of your death exists. Every joy, every sorrow, every decision, every consequence, all exist simultaneously in the block universe. But if all times exist equally, what creates our experience of moving from past to future? The answer is deeply unsettling. Nothing moves through time. Instead, consciousness appears to be localized to specific slices of the block universe, creating the illusion of temporal flow. Think of it like a movie. When you watch a film, the entire movie exists on the disc or file. Every scene, every frame, from opening credits to final fade-out. But your experience is of movement through the film, scene by scene, moment by moment. The movie isn't actually moving. Your viewing consciousness is progressing through a fixed, unchanging structure. In the block universe, reality is like that movie, complete, finished, eternal. Every moment that has ever existed or will ever exist is filmed and locked into the structure of space-time. What we call consciousness is like the viewer, experiencing these pre-existing moments in sequence, creating the illusion that time is flowing and that only the present moment is real. This isn't just philosophical speculation. The block universe emerges naturally from Einstein's equations. It's supported by experimental evidence from the Hafele-Keating experiment that measured time dilation in atomic clocks to the precise predictions of GPS satellites that must account for relativistic effects. Modern physics has embraced eternalism to such a degree that most theoretical physicists now accept that all times exist equally. The past hasn't ceased to exist. It's still there in the block universe, just as real as the present moment. The future hasn't yet come into being. It already exists, waiting in the four-dimensional structure of space-time. But here's where the story becomes even more disturbing. If the block universe is real, and if all moments of time exist simultaneously, then the future of our universe, including its ultimate fate, already exists as well. The heat death of the cosmos, the final moment when all energy has been expended and all processes have ceased, is already encoded in the space-time block, which means that in a very real sense, the universe has already ended. We're just consciousness experiencing predetermined slices of a finished eternal structure, a cosmic movie that reached its final frame long before we ever began watching. To fully grasp how time might have already ended, we must confront one of the most inexorable laws in all of physics, the second law of thermodynamics. This law states that entropy, the measure of disorder in a system, always increases over time. And this increase in entropy points toward a definitive end to our universe, the heat death. Entropy is often misunderstood as simply messiness, but it's far more profound than that. Entropy measures the number of possible microscopic arrangements that correspond to a given macroscopic state. A highly ordered system, like an ice cube, has relatively few possible arrangements of its molecules. A highly disordered system, like the puddle of water that ice cube becomes, has vastly more possible arrangements. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that isolated systems always evolve from states of low entropy to states of high entropy. Order spontaneously becomes disorder. Structure spontaneously dissolves into chaos. And this process is irreversible. We never see puddles spontaneously freeze into ice cubes, scrambled eggs spontaneously unscramble themselves, or broken glasses spontaneously reassemble. This is why we have an arrow of time. While the fundamental laws of physics are largely reversible, the statistical behavior of large systems creates a directional flow from past to future. The past is the direction of lower entropy. The future is the direction of higher entropy. We remember the past and not the future because memory formation requires the creation of low entropy records in high entropy environments. But the second law of thermodynamics doesn't just explain the arrow of time, it also predicts the ultimate fate of our universe. If entropy always increases, and if the universe is a finite system, then eventually entropy must reach its maximum possible value. At that point, no more work can be done, no more energy can be extracted from differences in temperature or density. The universe reaches thermal equilibrium, the heat death. In this final state, sometimes called the Big Freeze, all matter will be dispersed uniformly throughout space. All stars will have burned out, all black holes will have evaporated through Hawking radiation, and all energy will be distributed evenly at the lowest possible temperature. No structures can form, no processes can occur, no information can be transmitted. The universe becomes a vast, cold, empty, unchanging void. According to current cosmological models, this heat death is not just a possibility. It's the inevitable fate of our universe. The expansion of space is accelerating due to dark energy, driving galaxies apart and preventing the gravitational collapse that might have led to a big crunch. Instead, we're headed inexorably toward maximum entropy and thermal equilibrium. But here's the crucial insight. If the block universe is real, then this heat death doesn't just await us in some distant future. It already exists as part of the four-dimensional space-time structure. The final moment of maximum entropy, the ultimate end state of our universe, is already encoded in the cosmic film reel. This creates a paradox that's both fascinating and terrifying. In linear time, we think of entropy as increasing towards some future heat death. But in the block universe, all entropy states, from the low entropy Big Bang to the high entropy heat death, exist simultaneously. The entire thermodynamic evolution of the universe is already complete, already finished, already written into the structure of space-time. What we experience as the gradual increase of entropy over time is actually consciousness moving through predetermined slices of the block universe, each slice representing a different entropy state. We're not witnessing the universe evolve toward heat death. We're replaying a cosmic movie in which that evolution has already occurred. This raises profound questions about the nature of causality and change. If the heat death already exists in the block universe, in what sense is entropy increasing? If all entropy states exist simultaneously, what creates the apparent direction from order to disorder? The answer may be that entropy isn't really increasing at all. That's just how consciousness experiences moving through the pre-existing entropy gradient of the block universe. We perceive increasing entropy the same way we perceive temporal flow, not because anything is actually changing, but because our consciousness is localized to specific slices of a finished eternal structure. From this perspective, the second law of thermodynamics isn't describing an ongoing process of entropy increase. It's describing the fixed structure of the block universe, which is arranged with low entropy at one end, the Big Bang, and high entropy at the other end, the heat death. Our experience of entropy increasing over time is simply consciousness moving along this predetermined gradient. This view transforms our understanding of cosmic fate. We're not heading toward the heat death, we're already there. The heat death already exists, just as real and present as this moment you're experiencing now. What we call the passage of time is consciousness traversing the static landscape of entropy states that comprise the eternally existing block universe. In essence, time has already ended at the heat death, and we are simply consciousness experiencing the replay of events that led to that predetermined conclusion. Perhaps the most powerful way to understand how time might have already ended is through the analogy of a finished film. Imagine that you've just purchased a movie on DVD. The entire film, every scene, every line of dialogue, every visual effect from opening credits to closing credits already exists on that disc. The beginning, middle, and end are all encoded simultaneously in the physical structure of the DVD. When you watch the movie, you experience it as unfolding through time. You become invested in the characters, worried about their fates, uncertain about how the story will resolve. But this sense of uncertainty and unfolding is purely a function of your viewing experience. The movie itself is static, finished, complete. The hero's triumph was always encoded on frame 127,463. The villain's defeat was always there on frame 193,817. Your consciousness moves through the film frame by frame, creating the illusion of temporal flow, narrative progression, and dramatic tension. But nothing in the movie is actually changing or evolving. What creates your experience of cinematic time is not the film itself, but the movement of your awareness through the predetermined structure of the story. Now imagine that reality itself is like this finished film. Every moment of time, from the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago to the heat-death trillions of years in the future, already exists, encoded in the four-dimensional structure of space-time. Past, present, and future are all equally real, just as the first scene, middle scene, and final scene of a movie are all equally present on the DVD. What we call consciousness is like the DVD player, moving through this cosmic film frame by frame, creating our experience of temporal flow. We worry about the future because we haven't watched those scenes yet. We remember the past because we've already viewed those earlier frames. But the entire movie of reality, every birth, every death, every choice, every consequence, is already finished, already complete, already eternally present in the block universe. This analogy helps explain many puzzling aspects of time and consciousness. Why does time seem to flow at a constant rate? Because consciousness moves through the cosmic film at a steady pace, just as a DVD player runs at a consistent frame rate. Why can we remember the past but not the future? Because memory formation requires the kind of low entropy processes that only work in one direction along the entropy gradient encoded in the film. Why does the future seem open and undetermined while the past seems fixed and immutable? Because we haven't watched the future scenes yet, creating uncertainty about their content, while we've already experienced the past scenes and can access them through memory. But this openness is purely epistemic, a function of our limited knowledge, not the actual structure of reality. The film analogy also illuminates the relationship between physical laws and the passage of time. The laws of physics aren't forces that push reality from past to future. They're descriptions of the structure of the finished film. Einstein's equations don't tell us how space-time evolves. They tell us how the eternal space-time block is organized. The second law of thermodynamics doesn't describe entropy increasing over time. It describes the entropy gradient that already exists within the static structure of the cosmic movie. Even more disturbingly, this analogy suggests that everything we think of as dynamic process is actually static structure. Evolution isn't an ongoing process of species changing over time. It's a pattern encoded in the biological scenes of the cosmic film. Learning isn't the acquisition of new knowledge through time. It's consciousness moving through predetermined frames where information becomes accessible to awareness. Your personal growth, your relationships, your creative achievements, your moments of love and loss. All of these exist timelessly in the finished film of reality. What you experience as personal development through time is actually consciousness traversing pre-existing scenes where different aspects of your eternal, four-dimensional self become manifest. The most unsettling implication of this analogy is that it suggests free will might be fundamentally illusory. In a movie, characters appear to make choices, but these choices are actually scripted, predetermined by the film's structure. If reality is like a finished film, then our sense of making free choices might be similar. Consciousness experiencing predetermined decision points that were always encoded in the cosmic script. But the film analogy also offers a strange kind of comfort. If time has already ended, if the entire story of the universe is complete, then in some sense everything that will ever happen has already happened. Every problem that will be solved has already been solved. Every joy that will be experienced has already been experienced. Every love that will blossom has already blossomed. Death itself becomes less frightening from this perspective. What we call death is simply the end of consciousness moving through our particular thread of the cosmic film, but the thread itself, the four-dimensional structure of our entire life, from birth to death, exists eternally in the block universe. In some profound sense, we are immortal, not because we survive death, but because our entire existence is timelessly embedded in the eternal structure of reality. The cosmic film has already reached its final frame at the heat death of the universe. We are consciousness replaying that finished movie, experiencing the illusion of temporal flow as we move through predetermined scenes of an already completed story. If time has already ended, if reality is like a finished film with every scene predetermined and eternal, what happens to free will? This question strikes at the heart of human identity and moral responsibility. If our choices are already scripted, if our decisions already exist in the block universe, can we truly be said to have agency over our lives? The implications are both profound and disturbing. In our everyday experience, we feel like agents, beings capable of deliberating between options and selecting our preferred course of action. We experience doubt, weigh alternatives, and feel the weight of responsibility for our decisions. This sense of agency seems so fundamental that questioning it feels like questioning consciousness itself. But if the block universe is real, then every decision you will ever make already exists eternally in the four-dimensional structure of space-time. The choice you'll make tomorrow about what to have for breakfast isn't open and undetermined. It's already encoded in your world line through the block universe. Your decision to pursue a particular career, to marry a specific person, to have children or remain childless, all of these supposedly free choices already exist as facts about the structure of space-time. This seems to reduce human agency to mere illusion. If consciousness is simply moving through predetermined scenes of a cosmic film, then our sense of choosing seems no more real than the choices made by characters in a movie. The protagonist in a film appears to wrestle with difficult decisions and exercise agency, but these are simply scripted elements of a predetermined narrative. However, the relationship between determinism and free will becomes more complex when we consider the nature of consciousness in the block universe. While your choices may be eternally encoded in space-time, it's still consciousness that experiences making those choices. The deliberation, the weighing of options, the sense of agency, these are genuine aspects of conscious experience, even if they're replaying predetermined events. Consider an analogy. When you watch your favorite movie for the 10th time, you still experience emotional engagement with the character's choices, even though you know exactly what will happen. The predetermined nature of the plot doesn't diminish your experience of narrative tension and character agency. Similarly, the predetermined nature of the block universe doesn't necessarily negate your genuine experience of making choices. Some philosophers argue that what matters for free will isn't whether your choices are predetermined, but whether they flow from your own desires, beliefs, and rational deliberation. A choice can be both eternally encoded in the block universe and genuinely free if it reflects your authentic preferences and reasoning. The fact that these preferences and reasoning processes are themselves part of the predetermined structure doesn't eliminate their role in generating free action. But this raises deeper questions about the nature of personal identity in the block universe. If all moments of your existence are equally real and eternally present, what constitutes the you that makes choices? Are you the four-dimensional object extending through space-time from birth to death? Or are you the consciousness experiencing individual time slices of that four-dimensional being? From the block universe perspective, your entire life, every thought, emotion, and decision exists as a complex pattern in space-time. What we call personal growth and character development is actually the structure of this four-dimensional pattern. The you that learns from mistakes isn't changing through time. Rather, the pattern of your world line through the block universe is structured such that later time slices incorporate information from earlier time slices. This transforms our understanding of moral responsibility. If you commit a harmful act, that act exists eternally in the block universe, but so does any subsequent remorse, learning, and behavioral change. Moral development isn't about changing from a bad person to a good person through time. It's about the eternal structure of your world line containing both harmful actions and moral growth. The most unsettling possibility is that consciousness itself might be the only thing that moves through the block universe. While physical events, including brain states and decision-making processes, are all eternally present in the four-dimensional structure, consciousness might be something that traverses this static landscape, creating the experience of agency and choice. In this view, free will isn't about the ability to change the future already exists. Instead, free will is about consciousness navigating the predetermined structure of the block universe through authentic choice points. You cannot change what choices are encoded in space-time, but consciousness still experiences making those choices through genuine processes of deliberation and decision. This might seem like a consolation prize, free will that doesn't actually change anything, but consider that even in a traditional linear view of time, your past choices are fixed and immutable. The difference in the block universe is that your future choices are also fixed, but this doesn't change the fact that consciousness still experiences making them. Perhaps the most radical possibility is that consciousness is what determines which path through the block universe gets experienced. The entire four-dimensional structure might exist, containing all possible histories and futures, but consciousness selects which thread of events becomes the experienced reality. In this view, free will isn't about changing the block universe. It's about choosing which parts of the eternal structure to experience. Ultimately, the question of free will in the block universe may hinge on what we mean by freedom and choice. If freedom requires the ability to have done otherwise, then the eternalist view seems to eliminate free will. But if freedom means acting in accordance with one's own authentic motivations and rational reflection, then free will might survive even in a finished universe. What remains constant is the phenomenology of choice. Consciousness continues to experience deliberation, decision, and agency, even if these experiences are replaying predetermined scenes in the cosmic film. Whether this constitutes genuine free will or merely the illusion of agency may be less important than the fact that conscious experience continues to have moral and existential significance, even in a universe where time has already ended. The idea that time has already ended, that all moments exist eternally in a block universe, isn't entirely new to human thought. Throughout history, philosophers, mystics, and spiritual traditions have grappled with similar ideas about the nature of time, destiny, and eternal existence. What makes the modern scientific version remarkable is how it converges with ancient wisdom while emerging from the most advanced physics of our era. In ancient Greek philosophy, the Stoics developed a doctrine called eternalism that bears striking resemblance to the block universe theory. They believed that all events, past and future, exist in an eternal, unchanging cosmic order. The Stoic philosopher Chrysippus taught that everything that will happen has already been determined by the rational structure of the universe. This wasn't seen as a limitation on human freedom, but as participation in a cosmic logos, a divine rational principle that governs all existence. The Stoics distinguished between what they could and couldn't control. While the overall structure of events was eternally fixed, they maintained that human responses to these events remained matters of choice. This parallels the modern question of free will in the block universe. Even if all events are predetermined, consciousness still experiences choosing how to respond to those predetermined circumstances. Hindu and Buddhist philosophy offer even more profound parallels. The concept of kala in Hinduism encompasses not just chronological time, but eternal time, a dimension in which all moments exist simultaneously. The Bhagavad Gita contains a remarkable passage where Krishna reveals his cosmic form to Arjuna, showing him all times simultaneously. past, present, and future existing as one eternal moment. This vision terrifies Arjuna because it reveals that the battle he's about to fight, including the deaths of his relatives, has already occurred in eternal time. Buddhism's doctrine of dependent origination suggests that all phenomena arise in dependence upon causes and conditions that extend infinitely in all temporal directions. Nothing exists independently or at a single moment in time. Everything is interconnected across what Buddhists call beginningless time. This interconnectedness across time resembles the four-dimensional structure of the block universe, where events are connected not sequentially, but through the eternal geometry of space-time. The mystical traditions of various religions report experiences of transcending temporal consciousness and perceiving reality from an eternal perspective. Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart wrote about experiencing the eternal now, a state of consciousness in which all time is present simultaneously. Islamic Sufis describe waqt, a station of consciousness beyond temporal sequence where past and future collapse into an eternal present moment. These mystical reports often include disturbing elements that parallel our discussion of the ended universe. Mystics frequently report that from the eternal perspective, everything that appears to unfold through time has already occurred. The 13th century mystic Ibn Arabi wrote that creation is not an event that happened in the past, but an eternal relationship that transcends temporal sequence. From this view, the entire history of the universe, including its end, exists timelessly in divine consciousness. Eastern concepts of cyclical time add another dimension to these parallels. Hindu cosmology describes vast cycles of creation and destruction that repeat eternally. The current universe will end in dissolution, but this ending has already occurred infinite times before and will occur infinite times again. This suggests that cosmic endings are not unique events, but eternal patterns in the structure of existence. The philosophical doctrine of eternal recurrence, most famously articulated by Nietzsche, proposes that all events repeat infinitely across time. Nietzsche intended this as a thought experiment about how to live authentically, but it bears resemblance to the block universe idea that all moments exist eternally. But if freedom means acting in accordance with one's own authentic motivations and rational reflection, then free will might survive even in a finished universe. What remains constant is the phenomenology of choice. Consciousness continues to experience deliberation, decision, and agency, even if these experiences are replaying predetermined scenes in the cosmic film. Whether this constitutes genuine free will or merely the illusion of agency may be less important than the fact that conscious experience continues to have moral and existential significance, even in a universe where time has already ended. The idea that time has already ended, that all moments exist eternally in a block universe, isn't entirely new to human thought. Throughout history, philosophers, mystics, and spiritual traditions have grappled with similar ideas about the nature of time, destiny, and eternal existence. What makes the modern scientific version remarkable is how it converges with ancient wisdom while emerging from the most advanced physics of our era. In ancient Greek philosophy, the Stoics developed a doctrine called eternalism that bears striking resemblance to the block universe theory. They believed that all events, past and future, exist in an eternal, unchanging cosmic order. The Stoic philosopher Chrysippus taught that everything that will happen has already been determined by the rational structure of the universe. This wasn't seen as a limitation on human freedom, but as participation in a cosmic logos, a divine rational principle that governs all existence. The Stoics distinguished between what they could and couldn't control. While the overall structure of events was eternally fixed, they maintained that human responses to these events remained matters of choice. This parallels the modern question of free will in the block universe. even if all events are predetermined, consciousness still experiences choosing how to respond to those predetermined circumstances. Hindu and Buddhist philosophy offer even more profound parallels. The concept of kala in Hinduism encompasses not just chronological time, but eternal time, a dimension in which all moments exist simultaneously. The Bhagavad Gita contains a remarkable passage where Krishna reveals his cosmic form to Arjuna, showing him all times simultaneously, past, present, and future existing as one eternal moment. This vision terrifies Arjuna because it reveals that the battle he's about to fight, including the deaths of his relatives, has already occurred in eternal time. Buddhism's doctrine of dependent origination suggests that all phenomena arise in dependence upon causes and conditions that extend infinitely in all temporal directions. Nothing exists independently or at a single moment in time. Everything is interconnected across what Buddhists call beginningless time. This interconnectedness across time resembles the four-dimensional structure of the block universe, where events are connected not sequentially, but through the eternal geometry of space-time. The mystical traditions of various religions report experiences of transcending temporal consciousness and perceiving reality from an eternal perspective. Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart wrote about experiencing the eternal now, a state of consciousness in which all time is present simultaneously. Islamic Sufis describe waqt, a station of consciousness beyond temporal sequence where past and future collapse into an eternal present moment. These mystical reports often include disturbing elements that parallel our discussion of the ended universe. Mystics frequently report that from the eternal perspective, everything that appears to unfold through time has already occurred. The 13th century mystic Ibn Arabi wrote that creation is not an event that happened in the past, but an eternal relationship that transcends temporal sequence. From this view, the entire history of the universe, including its end, exists timelessly in divine consciousness. Eastern concepts of cyclical time add another dimension to these parallels. Hindu cosmology describes vast cycles of creation and destruction that repeat eternally. The current universe will end in dissolution, but this ending has already occurred infinite times before and will occur infinite times again. This suggests that cosmic endings are not unique events, but eternal patterns in the structure of existence. The philosophical doctrine of eternal recurrence, most famously articulated by Nietzsche, proposes that all events repeat infinitely across time. Nietzsche intended this as a thought experiment about how to live authentically, but it bears resemblance to the block universe idea that all moments exist eternally. If every moment recurs infinitely, then in some sense all moments exist simultaneously across the infinite repetitions. Modern existentialist philosophy grappled with the implications of living in a potentially predetermined universe. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that even if determinism is true, consciousness creates meaning through the experience of choice and responsibility. This echoes the question of whether free will can exist in the block universe. Perhaps what matters isn't whether choices change the future, but whether consciousness experiences making authentic choices. Contemporary philosopher of mind Thomas Nagel has written about the tension between the view from nowhere, the objective scientific perspective that sees all events as part of a timeless physical structure, and the subjective experience of agency and temporal flow. This tension perfectly captures the existential challenge of living as conscious beings in a block universe. Religious concepts of predestination and divine omniscience raise similar questions. If God knows all future events, are those events already determined? Various theological traditions have struggled with reconciling divine foreknowledge with human free will. The block universe theory makes these theological questions into scientific ones. If all moments exist eternally in space-time, What happens to human agency and moral responsibility? Some spiritual traditions embrace the idea that time is illusory and that awakening involves recognizing the eternal nature of existence. Advaita Vedanta teaches that ultimate reality, Brahman, is beyond time and change, and that temporal existence is Maya, a kind of cosmic illusion created by consciousness. This bears a striking resemblance to the idea that temporal flow is an illusion created by consciousness moving through the static block universe. Perhaps most intriguingly, many wisdom traditions suggest that confronting the illusory nature of time leads not to despair, but to liberation. If the passage of time is a kind of cosmic dream, then awakening from this dream doesn't eliminate meaning. It reveals a deeper kind of meaning based on eternal rather than temporal values. The convergence of ancient wisdom and modern physics suggests that the idea of ended time touches something fundamental about the nature of existence. Whether approached through mystical experience or mathematical analysis, human consciousness seems repeatedly drawn to the possibility that what we call time is not the fundamental structure of reality, but rather a particular way of experiencing something far more vast and eternal. If time has already ended, if we are consciousness moving through predetermined frames of a cosmic film, what happens when we reach the final scene? This question opens up the most disturbing and profound implications of ended time, the existential abyss that awaits at the conclusion of the predetermined story. In the standard model of cosmology, the universe ends with heat death, a state of maximum entropy where all usable energy has been dissipated and no work can be done. All stars burn out, all black holes evaporate through Hawking radiation, and the universe becomes a vast, cold, empty expanse at uniform temperature. From this final state, no information can be processed, no structures can form, and no consciousness can exist. But if the block universe is real, this heat death isn't a future event we're approaching. It's an eternal reality that already exists as part of the four-dimensional structure of space-time. The final frame of the cosmic movie is already there, waiting at the end of the entropy gradient that structures the block universe. This raises a terrifying question. What happens to consciousness when it reaches that final frame? If consciousness is what creates the experience of temporal flow by moving through the block universe, what occurs when it encounters the end of the movie? One possibility is that consciousness simply ceases when it reaches the heat death. Like a DVD player that stops when the movie ends, awareness might simply terminate at the maximum entropy state of the universe. From this perspective, consciousness is a temporary phenomenon that exists only while moving through the habitable portions of the block universe. The cosmic film has an ending, and that ending includes the end of all conscious experience. But this raises paradoxes about the nature of consciousness in the block universe. If consciousness can begin and end, what starts it and stops it? If the block universe is eternal and unchanging, how can consciousness have a beginning and ending within it? These questions suggest that consciousness might be something beyond the physical structure of space-time, something that interacts with the block universe but isn't entirely contained within it. A more disturbing possibility is that consciousness becomes trapped at the final frame, experiencing the heat death eternally. Imagine reaching the end of a movie but being unable to stop the DVD player, forced to experience the final scene over and over, forever. If consciousness reaches the maximum entropy state of the universe and cannot move beyond it, awareness might become locked in eternal stasis, experiencing the cosmic ending indefinitely. This scenario transforms the heat death from a merciful conclusion to a state of infinite existential horror. Rather than the peaceful cessation of experience, consciousness might find itself trapped in eternal confrontation with the ultimate meaninglessness, unable to move backward through the block universe to revisit better times, unable to move forward because there is nowhere further to go. Another possibility is that consciousness somehow resets when it reaches the heat death, cycling back to experience the cosmic film again from the beginning. Perhaps reaching the final frame triggers a return to the first frame, creating an eternal loop of cosmic experience. In this scenario, consciousness is condemned to relive the entire history of the universe repeatedly, watching the same cosmic story unfold infinite times. This cyclical view has precedence in both ancient philosophy and modern physics. The Hindu concept of cosmic cycles suggests that universes are created, evolve, and dissolve in endless repetition. Some interpretations of quantum cosmology propose cyclic models, where our universe is just one iteration in an infinite series of cosmic cycles. But perhaps the most radical possibility is that the apparent ending of time is itself an illusion, that what we perceive as the heat death is simply a transition to something beyond our current understanding. Just as our everyday experience of flowing time may be an illusion created by consciousness moving through the block universe, our conception of cosmic ending might be another illusion created by the limitations of our current perspective. Consider that consciousness itself remains deeply mysterious. We don't understand how subjective experience arises from physical processes, how qualia emerge from neural activity, or what the relationship is between mind and matter. If consciousness can create the illusion of temporal flow by moving through the block universe, perhaps it can also transcend the apparent boundaries of that universe. Some theories suggest that consciousness might be fundamental to reality itself, not an emergent property of complex matter, but a basic feature of the cosmos. If this is true, then consciousness might exist independently of the physical structures that seem to support it. The heat death might end physical processes, but it might not end consciousness itself. Another possibility emerges from multiverse theories in quantum mechanics and cosmology. If our block universe is just one of countless parallel realities, then consciousness might move between different cosmic films when it reaches the end of one. The heat death of our universe might simply trigger consciousness to begin experiencing a different timeline, a different cosmic story, a different arrangement of eternal moments. This raises the ultimate question. If consciousness is what experiences the block universe, what is consciousness itself? Is it something that exists within space-time, bound by the physical laws that govern the cosmic film? Or is it something that transcends space-time, using the block universe as a kind of experiential playground? The existential twist deepens when we consider that if time has already ended, then every possible conversation about this topic has already occurred. Every moment of wonder, terror, acceptance, or denial that this documentary might inspire in viewers already exists eternally in the block universe. The very act of contemplating whether time has ended is itself a predetermined scene in the cosmic film. Yet this doesn't diminish the profound nature of the question. Even if our contemplation is scripted, consciousness still experiences the genuine mystery, the authentic confrontation with the possibility that everything we believe about reality is backwards. The existential weight of these ideas doesn't depend on whether they're unfolding in linear time or replaying in eternal structure. Perhaps the most unsettling realization is that if time has truly ended, then death itself is not an escape from consciousness, but merely a transition to a different kind of eternal experience. The final moments of every conscious being already exist in the block universe, frozen forever at the end of their world line. But consciousness itself, whatever consciousness truly is, might continue beyond these individual endpoints, experiencing the eternal structure of reality from perspectives we cannot currently imagine. As we reach the end of our journey through the possibility of ended time, we're left not with answers, but with questions that haunt the very foundations of human existence. If time has already ended, if we are consciousness replaying predetermined scenes in a cosmic film that finished long ago, then everything we thought we knew about reality requires radical revision. What is memory if the past still exists as vividly as the present? When you remember your childhood, are you accessing information about events that happened to you? Or are you somehow connecting with earlier slices of your four-dimensional self that exist eternally in the block universe? Memory might not be a record of the past, but a kind of temporal perception that allows consciousness to access other regions of its eternal existence. What is choice if all our decisions already exist in the structure of space-time? When you deliberate about what to do next, are you actually determining the future? Or are you consciousness experiencing the predetermined process by which a decision that already exists becomes accessible to awareness? Free will might not be about changing the future, but about consciousness authentically experiencing the eternal structure of its own choices. What is now if all moments exist simultaneously? This present moment, as you hear these words, as thoughts and feelings arise in your consciousness, is not the leading edge of time's flow, but simply your current position in the eternal landscape of the block universe. The now might not be a moment in time, but a location in the four-dimensional structure where consciousness finds itself. What is hope if the future is as fixed as the past? If your destiny already exists eternally in space-time, does striving for improvement become meaningless? Or does hope transform into something deeper? Not the wish that things will get better, but consciousness recognizing its eternal nature and finding meaning in the structure of existence itself rather than in temporal outcomes? What is death if consciousness transcends individual world lines? The termination of your biological processes might be simply one boundary in the four-dimensional structure of space-time, but consciousness itself might continue experiencing other aspects of the eternal cosmic film. Death might not be an ending, but a transition to different modes of experiencing the block universe. And ultimately, what is consciousness if it's the only thing that moves through an otherwise static reality? This question touches the deepest mystery of existence. While everything else in the universe might be fixed eternal structure, consciousness appears to be something dynamic, something that traverses the static landscape of space-time and creates the experience of temporal flow. Perhaps consciousness is not produced by the physical universe, but is instead the fundamental reality that experiences physical structure. This idea turns everything we think we know about mind and matter completely upside down. For centuries, we've assumed that consciousness emerges from complex arrangements of matter, that when neurons fire in particular patterns, subjective experience somehow arises from these physical processes. But what if we have it backwards? What if matter, energy, space, and time are actually constructs within consciousness, rather than consciousness being a construct within the material world? Consider this. You never actually experience matter directly. You experience sensations, thoughts, perceptions, feelings, all contents of consciousness. Even when you touch a solid object, you're experiencing the sensation of touch within consciousness, not matter itself. When you see a star, you're experiencing visual phenomena in consciousness, not the star directly. Everything you've ever known about the physical universe has come to you through conscious experience. Perhaps the material world, with all its particles and forces and space-time geometry, exists as a kind of experiential medium for consciousness rather than consciousness being an emergent property of matter. Think of it like a virtual reality game. The digital landscapes and characters aren't the fundamental reality, but rather experiential content generated for consciousness to explore and inhabit. If this is true, then the laws of physics aren't fundamental constraints on reality. They're more like the rules of an immersive game that consciousness plays within itself. Einstein's equations don't describe the ultimate structure of existence. They describe the operating principles of one particular experiential reality that consciousness has generated. The block universe, with its four-dimensional structure containing all of past and future, might be like the complete code of this cosmic game. Every level, every scene, every possible interaction already programmed and ready to be experienced. What we call the passage of time is consciousness moving through this pre-existing experiential structure, like a player progressing through the levels of a finished video game. If this is true, then the apparent ending of time in heat death might not eliminate consciousness, but might transform it. Just as consciousness currently creates the illusion of temporal flow by moving through the block universe, it might be capable of creating other kinds of experiential realities that we cannot currently imagine. When the cosmic game of physical reality reaches its final level, the heat death where no more experiences can be generated within the framework of matter and energy, consciousness might simply generate an entirely different kind of experiential reality. Perhaps it creates new universes with different physical laws, different dimensions, different ways of structuring experience. Or perhaps consciousness transcends the need for any kind of structured reality at all, existing in pure awareness without the mediation of space, time, matter, or even thought. The entire adventure through physical reality, from the Big Bang through the complexity of life and intelligence to the final heat death, might be like a single dream within an infinite consciousness that is always capable of dreaming new dreams. This possibility that time has already ended forces us to confront the deepest questions about the nature of existence, identity, meaning, and consciousness itself. If consciousness is fundamental, then you are not a temporary arrangement of matter that briefly generates awareness. You are awareness itself, experiencing itself through the temporary lens of what you call your individual life. Whether these ideas represent literal truth about the structure of reality or serve as powerful metaphors for the mystery of existence, they challenge every assumption we make about what it means to be alive in this strange, vast cosmos. They suggest that instead of being insignificant specks of consciousness in a vast, uncaring physical universe, we might be the very awareness through which reality experiences itself. We began with a forbidden question: what if time has already ended? We end with a recognition that this question opens onto an infinite mystery. If consciousness is what experiences the eternal structure of reality, then we are not just observers of the cosmic film. We are the experiencers, the witnesses, the awareness through which the universe knows itself. In a block universe where time has already ended, every moment of beauty, love, discovery, and transcendence exists eternally. Every triumph of the human spirit, every moment of connection, every breakthrough in understanding, all of these exist timelessly in the structure of space-time, as real and present as the stars themselves. But more than that, if consciousness is fundamental, then these experiences don't just exist as frozen moments in a cosmic film. They exist as eternal expressions of consciousness exploring its own infinite creative potential. Beauty doesn't just exist in the block universe. Beauty is consciousness recognizing itself in aesthetic form. Love doesn't just exist as neural patterns frozen in space-time. Love is consciousness discovering its own unity through the apparent separation of individual beings. Whether we are moving toward the future or replaying eternal scenes, consciousness remains the deepest mystery and the most profound reality. We are the universe experiencing itself, moment by eternal moment, in a cosmic film that might have no beginning, no end, and no need for either. The story of time might already be finished, but the mystery of consciousness, the mystery of what you are as you experience these words right now, remains as vast and unknowable as ever. You are not just watching the cosmic movie, you are the awareness in which the movie appears, the screen on which it plays, and the consciousness that gives it meaning. And perhaps that mystery is not a problem to be solved, but the eternal gift of existence itself, consciousness endlessly discovering its own infinite nature through every possible form of experience, including the strange and wonderful experience of believing, for a time, that it is trapped inside a finished film reel called reality. The film may have ended, but consciousness, what you truly are, is eternal, infinite, and forever free to dream new dreams, experience new realities, and explore the inexhaustible mystery of its own being.